Hi everyone, I'm Erin Thompson with Everyday Expressions. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm really excited for this video today. I'm featuring the new Picket Studios October 2024 release, and we're using the new Graceful Magnolias Kelly Taylor designed stamp set. This is so pretty, and if you know me, florals are my jam. So when I saw these, I had to have them. I love magnolias. I live here in Tennessee, and I don't have a magnolia tree yet, but I take that back. I have a type of magnolia called the kind of everyday generic name is we call them tulip magnolias or tulip trees, and they are a type of magnolia, and they're so pretty in the springtime. But I guess at first I was thinking of the beautiful big white, creamy white magnolias that a lot of people have in their yards, and I don't have one of those yet, but I hope to eventually. So I'm featuring this I wanted to share some of my tips for easy watercoloring. And I have to tell you, I am not a watercoloring expert. Um, I I can do it, and I think the Zig real brush markers that I'm using here help make it very, very easy, and to make it look a little bit more professional than what maybe my skills would normally allow. And the other thing that helps is if you use a clear or some sort of an embossing powder and heat set it for your image, and then it will help contain your water into its own little spaces so it doesn't all run together. And I find if you're like a beginner or a beginner slash intermediate watercolorer, that definitely helps you fake it till you make it. Number one trick there. And then, like I said, the Zig brush markers make it very, very easy. So you can see I begin there by just using a little scratch piece of the same paper. I use Strathmore Bristol Smooth mixed media paper. And that's another trick I want you to know. I don't know exactly how it's made. It's called a mixed media paper, but it can take a lot of water and a lot of abuse. And I find that water-based dye inks or watercolors do not soak into the paper as quickly as they would if this were a true hot press or cold press watercolor paper. Those I just don't have as much luck being a beginner watercolorer with real watercolor paper because the color tends to soak in a little bit faster than I can get it to move. And so I really like to use Strathmore Bristol Smooth mixed media paper because it has a little bit of a slick coating and the water doesn't soak in as quickly, and it allows me to move that color around without it truly soaking into the paper. So I took a panel here, and like I said, I used white Wow embossing powder, and I heat set it, that large magnolia image. And then I took the following colors for my Zig Real Brush markers. I used 065 Mid Brown, 204 Blossom Pink, 055 Pale Yellow, 401 Evergreen, and 046 Mid Green colors. And the reason I swatched those out on a small piece of Strathmore paper is because I have not swatched these or created a color chart, which I really need to do. So I had to try a couple of them and see what I liked. And I really wanted to go for a very soft, kind of organic look here. And I think it worked out really well. It also lets you kind of not be as perfect because the lighter colors are more forgiving, I think, and kind of don't see the mistakes as much. So I actually sped this way up, but I kept in almost every clip of the painting process. And I'm using a silver black velvet watercolor brush. And these are not the most expensive brushes. They are kind of an intermediate to a little bit better paintbrush, and I'm using a number 4 here. And you can find these even on Amazon, but they're not. A trick that I always recommend is don't go with the cheapest supplies you can find. If you want better results, you have to use a little bit better supplies. And so the Zig brush markers and the silver black velvet brushes using the Strathmore paper will give you a little bit better results. So I begin by, my process is this. First of all, I grab a dirty water glass and a clean water glass. And what that means is when you first have color on your brush, you're going to dip it into the dirty water and then give it a second rinse in the clean water. And then you will also want a paper towel there to the side. And after you dip your brush in the clean water, you'll always want to like kind of dab off the excess water on your paper towel. So I begin by adding almost every section. You'll see I lay down some water first, and this also allows me to have a little bit more wiggle room. So I add some water, and you don't want to add too much. If you add too much, use your paper towel to gently dab some of that off, because if you have too much, your Zig brush markers may not put enough color down. But I wet a section at a time, and then I'll go in with my brush marker and add a little bit of color, and then use the watercolor brush to move it around a little bit. And so I lay down a base coat that's your softest color, kind of pull it out to the tips so that the lightest or highlights of the petals are going to be at the tips, and concentrate the color more inward, down towards the widest bottom part of the petals. And you can see then I go around, I lay the base color down, and normally by the time I'm ready to go back and add a little bit more color, it's mostly dry. Now I will say that first petal, the biggest one up to the right, I kind of messed with that a lot. And if you do mess with this paper enough, it will start to kind of wear the paper a little bit more than what real watercolor paper would. So you just want to be a little bit careful on how much water you're putting down there. And I began with yellow, and then I put a lighter green, and then I added a little bit of darker green there at the base of the leaves. Then I moved, and in this entire process, I only used one pink color. I just watered it down and kept it very light in the first layer, and then I went back and added more, like 2 or 3 more times. So another trick that I have is you want to work in sections and kind of alternate and skip sections that are right next to each other. So maybe do one leaf or petal, skip the one next to it, go to the third one, and that way you won't have water kind of running into each other, even though you have the heat embossed image, and that will somewhat contain your water. If you skip it and alternate, it tends to dry in between, and then you won't have it running together, and you'll have less opportunity to kind of mess it up. So there you see I'm actually letting some of the pink dry, the green dry, and I've gone in to add some of the brown and go back in and add some of the darker shaded areas. And the other nice thing is I don't so much do it on this one, but what's nice is these Zig brush markers, especially if you're using kind of analogous colors. Let's say you used a yellow and then you wanted to go in with a red. You could blend those together, and it would blend very nicely just with the brush markers, and you don't even have to go in and use any paint or any water. So here you see at the very end of the flowers, I'm using just the very fine tip of that brush, and I'm adding in the details, kind of almost like a real watercolorist would go in with a much more dry brush and narrow brush, and add in some of that very fine detail at the end. And I'm just using the marker for this. I won't go back in with much water. Oh, you can see I am going in a little bit to blend that. I just needed a little bit darker coat there. But then you'll see at the very end, I do go in with just the brush and very finely add those details. And that is what I find is the very trick to making it look kind of pulled together and more professional at the end, is that fine detail. But you can see actually in this layer, I was going in just to add the darker color, and I'm blending it a little bit with not too wet, but not too dry of a brush there. And really what I'm trying to show you throughout this video is it's so easy. You just do a little bit of practicing, because honestly, I do not practice very much. And that's why I still call myself a beginner. And you see, here's another tip there. Remember that your paper towel can almost be like an eraser. If you add a little bit of water, if you mess something up, go in there, kind of brush it away with your water, and then use your paper towel to dab that up. And it really does work almost like an eraser. So don't be afraid to do that. And you can remove that, excess if you mess up, and then basically go back and start over again. Wait until it dries and then go back and start over. And then I'm just using the paper towel there to dab some of the color off. That it's not going to dry, but you definitely want to dab it up before it smears. It will sit on top of that embossed image. So I'm just dabbing some of that ink off of that. And then there you can go in, and you see how going back in with the brush really added in a little bit of detail there in the brown buds at the base, and now here on the petals. It's that final finishing touch. And then go in, and you don't want to remelt your embossed image, but kind of heat set it so that it dries and sets. And then we die cut that image with the coordinating die. And then I have to say, I was really excited to use this new A2 ripped notebook cover die. It adds a lot of interest and detail in the background, and I actually just decided to keep this card very white on white layered for a kind of formal, nothing to detract in the background from our pretty image. I wanted to keep it very natural and organic. And then I've also used the new Beyond Basics A2 cover plate die, and I like, once again, the interest that it's going to add to the background. I use the solid rectangle to cut the bigger outer rectangle. Here I'm just inking the sentiment with a brown ink, and I'm going to add foam tape behind it. I used a lot of foam tape on here to pop up my flowers and this sentiment. And then I've used my fingers to just kind of wiggle around and kind of give some dimension to that die cut. Adhere that right to the background. Then I'm going to add foam tape to my die cut, layer that on there and behind my sentiment. And really, this card did not take me that long to do. It's really fun to sit down with your watercolors and take your time, and don't get frustrated by it. Like I said, use some water, use your paper towel if you make a mistake, dry it up, and start over again. And then I finish it up with these iridescent moonshine sequins, and add some of those just for a little bit more interest. And there you go. It's so easy. What do you think? I love the soft, organic watercolor look, and that I feel like a little bit more of an artist for this card. And I really encourage you to try it. And if you don't have Zig brush markers, don't forget, you can always use your dye-based inks. Or if you have any of those water-based dye ink refills, you could put a couple drops in a palette and add some water to watercolor with. Works just as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.